1 Peter 4:17. For the time has come for judgment to begin at the house of God. And if it begins with us first, what will be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of God? Now, if the righteous one is scarcely saved, where will the ungodly and the sinner appear? I have understood that to mean judgment begins in the house of God, looking something like this. I'm now considering it means something different because of new information which has come to light. I was very disturbed and grieved at the following information. I just want to put that out there if now is not a good time for someone to watch this. Bible Study Tools talks about the house of God. It references Genesis chapter 28. That reads, Now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night, because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Later at verse 16 it says, Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Then Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put at his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel. Looking at 1 Peter 2, we are likened to stones, and coming to him as to a living stone which has been rejected by people, but is choice and precious in the sight of God. You also, as living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. So this is the place where he had this dream about the ladder going to heaven. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. Many of us, myself included, have wondered if the ladder Jacob saw might not have been talking about the DNA. Let's go back and revisit the events that happened in the month of April 2024. In addition to everything we were looking at, there was a very big event which happened and no one talked about it. The reason no one talked about it is because it seems it was done nearly in secret. One event in April 2024 is the IBM Deep Blue True North supercomputer, which is a hybrid human brain, was said to go online. Very little information is available about the supercomputer otherwise. April 2024 had the solar eclipse that went over multiple places called Nineveh. And looking back at that, I do believe it was a sign of coming judgment, because what I'm getting ready to share absolutely confirms to me judgment is coming, and judgment will begin in the house of God. There are multiple calendars people follow. One of them is the Zadokite calendar, and the month began with Passover on the Zadokite calendar. Eric Reichman's channel is really interesting, talking about the solar system and constellations. I'll put the link to the 7 vials in the video description below. From some of his videos, it shows the 7th vial was filled on April 7th. April 8th had not only a planetary alignment, but a solar eclipse. April 19th brought Taylor Swift's new album, which doesn't have a lot to say nice about Christianity. It's also what's called the blood sacrifice to the beast, or the Feast of Moloch. The AI overview on Google says it's not a recognized historical event. There are sources online which state otherwise. This was the god of ancient child sacrifice, and that feast will continue until May 1st, which is also Beltane. Next on the calendar was Passover on the Hebrew calendar. That began April 22nd, and that would continue until the 30th. There's the Lyrid meteor shower and the Pons Brooks Devil Comet. And this is during a full moon. Eric Reichman said the April 8th eclipse was probably the greatest sign we've ever been given. He also said the Devil Comet left the constellation of the Bull or the Beast. I really appreciate his input. Thank you for that, Eric. I believed the month would end with World Immunization Week, the 24th through the 30th of April. Boy, was I wrong. There was something called the Unveiling of the statue. This took place on April 25th. Still happening on April 25th is the blood sacrifice to the beast, or as some people call, the Feast of Moloch. It is also Passover on the Hebrew calendar. In addition, it is National DNA Day, and this, the unveiling of the statue, is taking place at the National Institute of Health. The name of the statue is called the Ladder. The name of the woman who created this is named Mary. From the genome.gov website, the Ladder blends biblical imagery and modern science, drawing parallels between Jacob's ladder and the structure of DNA. Here, the bend in the path of the ladder is translated into the familiar double helix of DNA. The four messengers, quote, ascending and descending, become the four nucleic acids that encode our genetic information. Mirroring these four messengers, or four nucleic acids, the four children climbing the ladder represent the diversity of humanity. With this work, the artist posits that the biblical passages might imply an early understanding that the connection between past and future generations is the curving double helix or ladder of DNA. Looking up the name of the person who's listed as the director on the placard of the statue brings us the following information. Her name is Diana Bianchi. It says she is a medical geneticist and neonatologist noted for her research on fetal cell microchimerism and prenatal testing. Looking up microchimerism, it says it's based on the hybrid chimera of Greek mythology. Now looking at the statue that the artist named Mary created. The statue shows a baby straddling the top of the DNA ladder and other babies climbing up. In a separate write-up, I found this. It is called The Garden of Great Ideas. In his dream, Jacob receives a message about generations that will flourish at the site where he sleeps. Why is a ladder the theme of this dream? The ladder proposes a 21st century answer to that question. If the simple meaning of the story is about future generations, perhaps a deeper interpretation is about biogenesis, and that our understanding of genetics will begin when we see that the chemical structure of genetic material resembles a ladder. The portraits of the angels are intended to celebrate our genetic diversity and represent the four families of man. This particular reference calls them angels, not babies. Looking at what the four parts of man might mean, one of the options has to do with theology, and that references Mark 12:30. That portion reads, Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with, these are the four parts, all your heart, all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. An alternative option for the four families of man are the four patriarchs in the Bible: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Israel. It appears this statue is almost a key, a puzzle piece a puzzle piece to a secondary statue. Notice how the babies or the messengers, depending on which source you choose to believe, are looking up. There's another statue which appears to be made of similar materials, which also has children looking upward. While it resembles a DNA helix, what goes into the pants of the beast is called a caduceus. And if you aren't already familiar, the arms of the beast have Latin words which mean to separate and to join together. Those Latin words are solve and coagula. Interesting, the arms say separate and join together, because the Bible says, therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. These two statues were not created by the same person. Again, a woman named Mary created the most recent one called the Ladder, and a man whose name was Mark is the one who created the satanic statue. My current understanding is judgment begins and the house of God no longer looks like this, it looks like this. Now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went to Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night, because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were descending and ascending upon it. Verse 16, Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. 1 Peter 4:17, For the time has come for judgment to begin at the house of God. And if it begins with us first, what will be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of God? Now if the righteous one is scarcely saved, where will the ungodly and the sinner appear? Therefore, let those who suffer according to the will of God commit their souls to Him in doing good, as to a faithful Creator.